Welcome to another episode of Key Biscayne Stories, where neighbors meet neighbors. Today, we're talking about the referendum changes to the village charter. To help us navigate through these 7 referendums, we welcome our mayor, Mike Davey. He's going to walk us through these 7 referendums. A little bit about our mayor: he served for 8 years in the village council. 4 as our mayor. He has been living in the Key for 19 years with his family. I think I met your lovely wife, and I have not met your kids yet, but in time. But Mayor, how are you doing today?
Living the dream. All good. Happy Monday.
Thank you for jumping on the show on this Monday. I know that for a lot of kids, and schools, and I guess government employees.
Schools are in.
Schools are in today?
Yeah, schools are in. My wife's working. Public schools are in.
So let's dive right in then. So I'll just read. I have a copy here of the Islander News, a little plug there for our friend Husto. Yeah, I recommend everybody to grab a copy. There's the election ready pages with all the information on the upcoming ballot. So I'll just read it straight how it is here. Key Biscayne Referendum 1. The village charter requires capital projects in excess of $500,000 to be approved by ordinance. It is proposed that the charter be amended to increase capital project authorizing ordinance threshold amount from $500,000 to $1 million. So what does that mean?
Okay, so right now, if the village has an expenditure of less than $500,000, that expenditure can be approved by resolution. And a resolution means that it has to come before council. There's a public hearing on that. People are allowed to speak about it, and then there's a vote. And if it's approved on a resolution, it's approved. It's done. It's in the books, and that expenditure can be made. If it's over $500,000, there must be an ordinance. And for an ordinance, you need to notice the ordinance. You need 2 readings, 2 public hearings with public comments. And so it has to be approved on first reading, and then it has to be set for second reading, and then approved. And I think the charter was changed. I think the ordinance was changed in 2002 to make it 500,000. And, that's 20 years ago. So the idea is that $1 million is now the threshold. I understand where some people feel that having 2 readings is better than having 1 for expenditures, because you want people to be involved. You want people to be engaged, and you want them to have a say in how we spend our money. I get that. But the fact is, $1 million doesn't buy you what it used to, and sometimes those expenditures have to be made in a timely fashion for us to get things going. Additionally, and I will say this, and it's frustrating, the idea that people would come because there's 2 opportunities to speak as opposed to just the 1 for the resolution. People don't turn out, frankly, unless it's around election time. We don't have a really full chamber. I would love it if people were coming out to debate the resolutions that we have or the ordinances, but unfortunately, it's usually just a few people who come, generally the same people, time and time again. So I think this makes it easier for our council and our staff, our administration, to move things forward. We also only generally have 1 meeting a month. So what you're saying is, let's say in October we have a meeting. We don't have another meeting until December now, as I understand it. So you're going to have to wait that much longer to get projects going or to get things done. If let's say the community center needs new bikes. I think the bikes were something a while back that we had. If that expenditure was over 500,000, and again, I'm just using that example, which may be absurd for the bikes, but if it's over 500,000, we've got to wait for 2 months when you've got people who want and need to use that equipment. So I do think it streamlines the process for certain things, but I understand the hesitancy on this one, but I do think this is the best way to go.
Okay, and when you mean public hearing, is during the actual meetings, people get an opportunity to speak, right? It's not a separate outside meeting like when we want to review the park or something before it gets proposed.
That's right. It would be in the agenda as a resolution. You come in, you do your, you can make comments and public comments. And when a resolution pops, we'll ask people if they want to speak, and then, we vote, and that's the decision. Again, I'm not going to be on council when this is moved forward, but I do think it's a good thing. It's a good tool to It streamline, as I said, streamlines the process. We put a lot before this council, and given what we're going to be doing over the next, 5, 10, 15 years, I think we need to focus on the bigger items in terms of ordinances. Not that these expenditures aren't important, but if we decide, generally these things are items that we're going one way or the other, regardless, right? I mean, we've had resolutions where council has told staff, "Hey, go back and see if you can get that number down. Let's see if we can get more. Let's see if we can get this more cheaply, or let's work it in a different way." So it's not that council isn't going to look at these items. They are. They're going to, believe me. The folks up there really get into the issues and try and understand why we're making the expenditure and if we can save money. But in this way, it's simply going from an ordinance to a resolution, which just streamlines the process.
So for when you mentioned, I have two questions about the ability for the public to speak. How does
Sure.
that work? Do they need to sign up? Do they just show
Okay.
up, or what is the? Yeah.
It's ideal if they show up, at least on Zoom, so they can speak. But yeah, I generally during the meetings, and I would like, yeah, hopefully, I know they're working on it. Our Zoom has never been really good. Frankly, it's very difficult. It's like the nuclear codes. I mean, you've got to enter 18 digits, and you got to hop on one foot to get in to speak from the Zoom. And people have had difficulty speaking through the Zoom, and that's a little frustrating because it's important to hear from residents. But at every meeting, we have we have two public comments times. We have one early on, usually generally right after brief comments by council. Then there'll be public comments. Then we'll do special presentations, and then there's one later in the evening. That's an opportunity. And then if there's something on the that somebody wants to specifically speak to, ordinances we open for public comment, and referendum. Keep saying referendum. Resolution issues generally, if it's something, especially if it's something charged, we will certainly allow the public to speak. I think it's better to allow the public speak than not.
Okay. All right. And the other and regarding speaking opportunities, can people also request more time because it's like 2 or 3 minutes, right?
It's 3 minutes. I'm sorry. Yes, you get 3 minutes. Um, Generally, in the public comments, this is one of the toughest thing a mayor has to do is you've got to be uniform with everybody. Once you start letting one person go over their time, then you've got to let everybody go over their time. So I do try and limit it. Um, Frankly, if it's a former council member, then I will give them a little more time sometimes if it's an issue that they've worked on previously. But generally, I try to keep people to 3 minutes. If they go over a little bit, or if there's not a lot of people in attendance, I might let them go. But I try to keep pretty rigidly to the 3 minute rule.
You mentioned how the council members can always, say, "Hey, this resolution is not enough. We need more information," whatever, and stuff like that. So the question that I want to ask about that is how does the process of each council member, including yourself, of getting yourself up to speed or educated on what the administration is doing on these issues, how does that, I guess, information process work? Do you get, is it a constant thing? Do you meet with the manager on a regular basis? How does that work?
Well, I think each council member handles it differently, and it depends on the issue, frankly. But the staff is generally always available. I mean, I usually go through the manager if I want to talk to somebody about ordinances or resolutions. I talk to the manager, our chief financial officer, Benjamin Nussbaum, about financial issues. But you ask for information. I mean, that's the goal, right? We need to be informed when we're making this decision, and staff is the
Uh-huh.
best way to get informed. So that's the way to do it. They make themselves very available to us. They will reach out once the agenda has been sent out. Usually we'll get a note from the manager saying, "Hey, I'm available to speak with any and all of you about any issues you have. These are some of the issues that I see. You may want to focus on," but that's generally the way it goes.
Let's see. So the Key Biscayne referendum number 2. The village charter provides a limit on the village's total debt. On method of calculating the total debt limit is based upon the percentage of the total assessed value of all property within the village. It is proposed that this method of calculating be modified from 1% of the total asset value of all property within the village to 2%.
Right.
So what's going on
So,
here?
well, this is, look, where we are is we've approved the general obligation bond of $100 million back in 2020. Our
Mhm.
debt cap as it stands is, as you just said, it's 1% of our total value. Our total value is about 9.2 billion right now, which means 1% is $92 million. We already know that we're going to spend more than 92 million on all the resiliency projects that we have, right? We know we've got the flooding issues, we've got beach issues, we've got undergrounding. We have a number of things on the Back Bay. We're going to have to do some work on our seawalls. We've got a lot of things that we've got to do, and the fact is those things cost money. Now, we anticipate, because we've passed the bond, we are probably higher on the priority list for the federal and state government in terms of getting money coming down to us. We're going to have skin in the game in order to get that financing. So I believe that the smart move is to move the cap up to 2%. That would give us about 184, I think, $million in room as opposed to 92. And look, the whole argument of, oh, they just want to increase our debt. In when I took office, our outstanding debt was about $23.4 million. As of this past budget that we just approved, our outstanding debt is $8.9 million. So everybody in this village wants to keep our debt level as low as possible. But the fact
Mm.
is, we've got a lot of things that we've got to do. The stormwater project is going to be a big one. The undergrounding is going to be a big one. The Back Bay, the seawall is going to be a big one, and we've got to be ready to handle those things. The idea of waiting until we have everything lined up to establish our credit limit, that's nonsensical. I mean, if you're going to build a house, you want to know how much money you have the capacity to expend on that house, right? We want to do the same thing with the village. All of this money is an investment in our community. It's intended to increase property values, as opposed to those people who want to fight this and decrease property values.
So this doesn't mean obviously that we already indebted. That can be confused. Like you said, we were at 23 million, now we're 8 million, and this is going to give us the ability to secure the financing that we need in
Correct.
order to make all these changes for the future.
Doesn't mean, look, and again, it doesn't mean people shouldn't be paying attention. We're going to pay attention to our debt levels, and we're going to make sure we keep them as low as possible. But let's give ourselves the flexibility to get these things done. This village has always been fiscally responsible, and they're always leading the way and getting things done to improve the village. So the council, rather. So I feel like I feel giving the council the flexibility in terms of our debt is the smart move.
Okay, so number 3, Key Biscayne referendum number 3. The village charter provides a limit of the total debt incurred by the village. It is proposed that the village charter be amended to provide that the total debt of the village may be exceeded if approved by a majority vote of the electors in any referendum held after November 2022.
Right.
Okay.
So this is sort of, in a way, it's an alternative, but it's also supplemental to referendum number 2, in that this would give the opportunity to the people of the village, to the residents, to the voters, to determine if we wanted to exceed the debt cap. Having debt caps are not normal well, at least in the state of Florida. I think Miami-Dade, we're one of 3 communities that have a debt cap, but this would allow for, if 2 doesn't pass, or even if 2 passes and we get to a point, I think the quote is right now 250 million we need to do it. If we needed to spend that money, we, the people, would have the opportunity to say, you know what, yes, it makes sense why you're doing this. We should issue the bonds. We should get the money. We should invest in our community. So that's what it is. It was an alternative and or supplemental to referendum 2.
And when you mean that we need 200 million to do what? To do all these
To
changes that
do
we're
all
talking
the
about?
infrastructure projects,
Seawalls,
yeah, all the resiliency and sustainability projects we've been talking about, the beaches, the seawalls, the undergrounding, the flooding, all those things, they're going to take money, and we've got to be ready for it.
So just to fully understand the differences between number 2 and number 3, number 2 talks about our debt capacity based on our property values.
Right.
Right. We are going from 1%, which is what we already have, which is approximately, you said 90 million,
Yeah, just about
to
90 million.
two, right? About, and then 2% to 100, approximately 180 million.
Right.
Right. Our capacity to borrow, increasing our capacity to borrow.
Correct.
And the number 3 says is if you wanted to go above that, right? So whether it remains as is, which is 90 million, or we take it to 180 million.
Right.
If we wanted to go above that, voting yes on this would say that, okay, we can, but we need to go to referendum on the next voting cycle
Correct.
for the people to vote.
Correct. And
Okay.
you know, look, I'm not a fan of government by referendum, but I do understand if we're going to go above whatever level we've established, then yes, the people should have a voice in that. I think that's the best way to do it. I'm a proponent of 2 because I think, you know, giving council the wherewithal to handle all the projects that we've asked them to take on, you need the debt cap at 180.
So you like number 2 then? From
Yes, I like number 2. I also like
Okay.
number 3. I like to have even the more flexibility. I think we need
Okay.
to be financially nimble. We have to be flexible. We've got to be able to adapt and overcome any challenges that come at us in the coming years.
Okay.
And by we, I mean a village. Sorry, I'm not going to be on this council. I want to reiterate, this is flexibility for the folks sitting up there on the dais.
So moving on to number 4, Key Biscayne referendum number 4. The village charter requires that certain text amendments to the zoning code or other land development regulations be approved by majority vote of the electors.
Right.
The proposed charter amendment would allow approval of such text amendments by majority vote of the electors, vote of 5 of 7 council members, or unanimous vote of the council when 2 or more council members are required to abstain pursuant to Florida law. Wow, that was a hard read.
Yeah, look, none of these are fun to read, but they're the way you have to write these things to make sure they're completely compliant and legal. So look, back in 2007, Dr. Kelly and I think Max Pujanik came together and put forward a charter amendment. There's a lot of stress in the community about the Sonesta redevelopment, right? There was concerns because at the time, some of the first projects that came at us had these monstrosity buildings right up against single family homes. And that was within our code. There was also a push to make changes to our zoning to allow for condo hotels, where our code at that time did not, and still does not, didn't allow condo hotels. So that was their concern, and that was why this referendum was pushed. It won. I wasn't in favor of it at the time for many of the reasons for which this is being proposed. And then it was again brought to another referendum, and it passed. The problem has been that has really curtailed council's ability to amend our zoning code on more mundane and simple things like definitions. It's really sort of held us back from being. We had a ZORC in 2000, I want to say 2010 or 11, and we couldn't propose a lot of the changes. We couldn't put them forward because they would require a referendum. So we couldn't really make these changes we wanted to make. I think this gives us flexibility. I do understand, you know, there's been some pushback from people saying that they want to reserve some rights to make certain decisions. Like, for example, if we were to decide that we wanted to increase density or change the zoning, let's say something crazy, change single family zoning to commercial. I mean, things that have a major impact or could have a major impact in our community should be voted on by the electorate. I agree with that 100%. I'm going to propose tomorrow night at our council meeting that the next council enact an ordinance that lists those items that must go to the electors, meaning which zoning decisions must come to us, the people. Because that is one of the things, as you said, you know, one of the things would allow approval by a majority of the vote of the electors, comma, vote of 5 of 7 council members or unanimous vote of council when 2 or more council members are required to abstain. Um, and the supermajority works. I think, but I would like to see the next council be very specific as to what must go to the people and what can be done by either the people or a supermajority vote.
Okay. Just to be clear, the electorate and the electors are the people,
The residents, the voters.
the residents. Okay. So just to clarify on number 4, where it says the proposed charter amendment would allow approval of such text amendments by majority vote of the electors, vote of 5 to 7 council members, or unanimous vote of the council. These are options, right? So we're going to go from what we have now, which is it needs to go to the people on these changes, to allowing the council members to make that decision, whether it goes to the people or they make the decision and so forth, right?
Correct.
A couple of, there's also concern about the lack of details on this one.
Well, I think that's why I'm going to recommend that the next council create an ordinance that specifies which items must go to the electorate, must go to the voters. Nobody up there is for overdevelopment. I mean, Joe Rasco and the original incorporators, they incorporated because of overdevelopment. They're concerned about development and that they wanted to stop it. This council has always been very mindful of the need to keep development to a reasonable level. Nobody wants to overdevelop this key. Everybody loves the key the way it is. But we need to be nimble. There are also mechanisms. I think people are forgetting that. Let's say a council decided to take something that we all wanted. Let's say 5 members decided they wanted to let's do something crazy again. The single family homes, they want to make it commercial over there on Heather Drive. We, the people, could do a petition. We need 10% of the electorate to sign a petition to put out a referendum on that issue. And we would be able to turn that back. And I can assure you, if overdevelopment is on somebody's mind, that they're on the wrong island. Because the vast majority of us want to control density. We want to control development. We're not looking to do anything untoward toward our island. 10% of the voters. So in our case, I think it's about 780 signatures. But look, if somebody came in with some sort of development issue, we could get those signatures I'd stand outside Winn-Dixie to get those signatures in a minute.
Okay. Look forward to seeing that, but we'll hopefully doesn't get to that point.
The referendum, I just want to be clear, that referendum, that the question, it gives us a little more flexibility, and we need the flexibility on small changes to the zoning code that we don't right now have the capability of dealing with without going to a referendum, which is an expensive and unnecessary process on certain items, certain discrete items.
Got it. So Key Biscayne referendum number 5. The village charter does not currently require council member primaries. The proposed charter amendment requires a council primary if the number of candidates is equal to or greater than 3 times the number of open council positions. Candidates receiving the most votes would proceed to the general election, provided that the number of candidates would not exceed twice the number of open council positions. I love these. I love these referendum explanations.
Yeah, so this question is basically saying, because every 2 years we have 3 seats come up, right? We have 3 seats. Yeah. They're in staggered terms of 4 years. So every 2 years you have three seats come up. So that would mean that if more than 9 people signed up to run for office in any given year, there would have to be a primary. The problem with this, and I am not in favor of this, I understand the intent. The intent is to sort of get away from, to make sure that the most people are voting for the top 3, that we're not so diluted that some small minority gets somebody in because they were able to focus on their one person. But if that's what happens, that's what happens. This is, you've got to run good candidates and get them elected. The problem really that I see with this is this lengthens the election cycle, because we would have to have our mayors sign up in June because we may have to have the primary. If you have more than 2 people run for mayor, as we did this year, you need to have a primary in August. That makes a long election cycle for that position. But to have that for council members through the summer, I mean, that's just a lot. Having done what, 1, 2, 3, 4 campaigns, and I didn't have to do one in 2020. So 4 campaigns, it's a lot of work. And it's a lot to ask people who are volunteers, who are giving of their time to start so early on this process. So I'm more in favor of let them all run starting in August, and the top 3 vote getters get the seats. And that should be it.
All right.
But I do understand why. I understand the intent. I think it's fine the way it is.
So Key Biscayne referendum number 6. It is proposed to create a new section of the village charter to require courtesy electronic public notice. The proposed charter amendment would require the village to post courtesy electronic public notice on the village website or through other means of electronic communication for regular council meetings, workshops, sunshine meetings, and all meetings requiring public notice.
So, right. So right now, the requirement is that it be posted on the board, right, in Village Hall, and then usually, I think most have got to be noticed in the local paper. We're in the electronic age, right? People get their information on the internet. They get their information through emails and texts, and unfortunately sometimes chats. So what this would do would require that the village push out information in more forms. I think they're already doing it, really, but I think this is a good idea. I think that the more information we can get out to people, the more informed we can make people, the better off we all are. And if people have notice, then they can come to the meetings, they can participate, and that's what keeps this government going. So I'm a big fan of that one.
Awesome. I mean, the Village Connect is very good in summarizing what happens in the council meetings and in informing people of events. So if you haven't signed up for the Village Connect, go to the website and check it out. It's a newsletter that comes out on a regular. It's really good. So
yeah, agreed. Nice plug.
Helping out. And finally, number 7, Key Biscayne referendum 7. It is proposed to create a new section of the village charter to require the village council to adopt an ordinance after November 2022 election, establishing supplemental procedures and guidelines to ensure compliance with open meeting laws. Every 2 years thereafter, the village council would be required to review the ordinance to determine if any modifications to the ordinance are necessary.
Right.
Okay.
So this is kind of an interesting one. There are 2 reasons why this has come forward. First, one of the folks on the Charter Revision Commission felt that the prior council, there were way too many there were too many sunshine meetings. Too much was going on, where people were calling sunshine meetings. We actually had one incident where a sunshine meeting was called, and our former mayor actually was investigated by the state attorney's office for violating the sunshine law. Wound up costing us $35,000 as a community. They declined to prosecute. They decided to close the case when they found her to be contrite and term limited. So they didn't pursue it any further. But what it did was highlight that, things happen in these sunshine meetings that maybe shouldn't be. So I very much favor this one. And another source was actually our local journalists wanted it because they want to have notice of it. They want to know where these things are taking place, and they'd like to have them recorded. And I don't see any problem with that. If you're having a meeting in the sunshine, you should be recording them. I think that's not a bad idea. I'm trying to remember the last sunshine meeting I had. It's been a few years. I think it's a good thing. Look, open government's the best form of government. Making sure people are held accountable is good. And so I think the more we can do to make sure that all of this is on the up and up, the better off we are as a community.
Yeah, and sunshine meetings is basically when elected officials want to have conversations between each other that is business. I mean, when they have a conversation, it's business for the people's business. The people have the right to know when and how they can listen in.
That's right. Absolutely. Right.
All right. Well, Mayor Mike Davey, thank you so much. I think this is really walks us through the 7 charter referendums so that people can hopefully listen in and learn a little bit more about them before they make a vote.
Yeah, and look, and the one thing I will tell people is if you've got additional questions, everybody's got my cell phone. But reach out to people, find out from different people what their views are. We don't all agree on these referenda issues, which is fine. But we do have to continue to work together for the village. And I want people to come out. I want them to vote. I want them to be informed voters, and be informed participants in your community. November 8th doesn't end your obligation to be a part of the government. It's our government, and you need to step up to that podium and use your 3 minutes when there's an issue that you feel is important, but pay attention and understand what's going on, because it's your money, it's your community.
And I want to take this opportunity, as we mentioned, you served for 8 years as council member and 4 years as mayor. So I
Right.
want to take this opportunity to thank you for your service, because here I know it's a great community, it's a tough community, but you've done a great job
I
from
appreciate
what
it.
I've seen and what I hear. So thank you for your service, because I know this is all free stuff here, all volunteer, and you took time away from your family and for the loved ones and from your time to serve the community. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Look, I really did love it. It was my honor to be the mayor. It is my honor to continue to be the mayor for 29 more days, at least. So I'm happy to have done it, but I'm glad there's new blood coming in, and I'm glad I'm glad there's good people coming up.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a great one.